This week on Africa Weekly, we head to Mali, where railway employees are working to preserve Bamako's now defunct colonial era station, which serviced the country for almost 100 years. Then we head to Uganda, where a beauty pageant is being used to restore confidence in people who have been diagnosed with HIV. But first, let's take a look at the stories that made the headlines this week. Angola's Prosecutor General met with his Portuguese counterpart in Lisbon after announcing that the daughter of Angola's former president has been charged with money laundering and mismanagement. Isabel dos Santos will also face charges of influence peddling, misuse of corporate assets and forgery during her tenure as head of the Angolan state oil group, Sonangol. Eurobic said that Dos Santos, who owns 42.5% of the bank, had taken the decision to withdraw as a shareholder. In Portugal, a Eurobic banker targeted in the investigation had been found dead in his Lisbon home after apparently committing suicide. The UN has warned that swarms of desert locusts, which continue to pour into Kenya from Ethiopia and Somalia, threaten to ravage the entire East African sub-region. Recent weather in the region has created conditions that favour rapid reproduction of the crop-devouring insects. Left unchecked, their numbers could grow 500 times by June, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. Amnesty International has urged Nigerian authorities to halt the forced evictions of shanties and waterfront communities in the economic hub of Lagos. The Nigerian Navy fired into the air to evict some 10,000 residents of Tarkwa Bay in the latest mass eviction around the city. Lagos has in recent years seen repeated forcible evictions of poor communities living in prime locations, especially along the waterfront, as developers look to cash in by building high-end properties. 16 African leaders met with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the first UK-Africa Investment Summit in London that will see Britain cast out a net for trading partners in its new life outside of the EU. This comes less than 2 weeks before Britain formally ends its decades-long involvement in the European integration project.
In 2020, the UK is the ultimate one-stop shop for the ambitious, growing international economy. If you want investment in a new project or enterprise, just hop on the tube, one stop from here, and you'll be in the heart of Canary Wharf, where, along with its older sibling in the City of London, trillions of pounds of capital are being raised for every venture you can think of, from French construction to African telecoms to American cancer-curing drugs.
At least 10 people were killed when a seating area collapsed at a festival in Ethiopia. This happened during the Orthodox Christian celebration of Epiphany in the Ethiopian city of Gondar. A senior doctor at the University of Gondar Hospital said that in addition to the 10 people who were killed, as many as 150 were injured in the incident.
For several months now, no train has passed through this colonial-era station in Bamako. For almost 100 years, the Dakar-Bamako Express had connected Mali's capital to neighbouring Senegal. But since May 2018, the station's green carriages have remained stationary. The rail workers are trying to preserve the station, which has been a symbol of national pride since its inauguration. Mahaman Tienta worked for the Malian railway network for nearly 37 years.
On a day like today, a Monday, Train 12 departed. It was euphoric. People were crying here, and it was a reunion. Today it is something that we miss very much. You see how the station is dilapidated today. It has become a dump. The tills no longer work. Everyone's at a standstill because there are no trains.
The station was built in 1924 by the French to transport raw materials, becoming a hub in Mali's main trade route. But the development of road transport, lack of maintenance and the staggering cost of repairs have sunk the line. Since the line was closed, some 430 rail workers are out of work. An ex-railway worker, Moussa Traoré, is working on a 4-ton collection of documents which tell the history of the Bamako to Dakar line.
The archives really fall within the framework of the preservation of the nation's memory. The memory also, really, of the railway. Within the railway, there is the exploitation side of history, but also the economic side, the historical, and there is also the cultural side.
The railway even had its own music group called the Rail Band, formed at the station in 1970 and bringing together some of the best musicians from the region. Mamadou Bakayoko was the co-founder and drummer of the group.
I have tears in my eyes now, because I can imagine all the people from the Rail Band in front of me here. The people who aren't here are in their graves, because it was here, in this place, exactly on this spot, where the Rail Band was created.
A rail rehabilitation plan is being discussed with several partners, including the World Bank. At the end of 2018, Senegal and Mali each promised to contribute 15 million euros as a boost. But according to the trade unionists, the money has still not yet been paid.
Today, Ruth Akulu walks with confidence and a broad smile, but she's been on a long journey to arrive to this point.
I suffered from depression and anxiety for a very long time. This almost took me to the grave. But I discovered who I am, and that there is much more to life than just living with HIV.
Ruth grew up in this children's care home 16 kilometers from Ugandan capital Kampala. Her teenage mother could not take care of her. For reasons they did not understand, she repeatedly fell ill. At the age of 9, when she entered the children's home, she was confirmed as HIV positive. But she was not actually informed of the diagnosis until she was 13. Her childhood came to an abrupt end.
I would get really depressed and I withdrew from every activity, whether at church or with my friends. They could come and say, Ruth, let's go out. I don't go out. I just stay in my room and cry.
Lacking adequate support, she tried to end her life. The Ugandan network of young people living with HIV and AIDS organized the Y+ beauty pageant to help HIV-positive youth break the silence. The United Nations reports that in 2018, there were 1.4 million people living with HIV in Uganda, with 53,000 new infections. And prejudice towards these people is deeply rooted in Uganda.
We got parents that really still had a belief that if your young person is living with HIV or they contract HIV, there's no meaning of paying school fees for them. And that is really very sad. That is really very bad.
Events like this are trying to help young people with HIV regain some of their self-confidence and challenge those who are prejudiced against them.
Sudanese vets scrambled to save 4 captive lions that were left sick and malnourished in Khartoum Park during months of political and economic turmoil. The 5th, a lioness, died of dehydration and lack of food, despite receiving intravenous fluids for several days following the launch of an online campaign for veterinary help. Al-Qureshi Park is managed by Khartoum municipality, but funded in part by private donors, which dried up in the face of the economic crisis that triggered nationwide protests through much of last year. And finally, Cameroon designer Imane Ayisi is the first designer from sub-Saharan Africa to be included in the official calendar of Paris Fashion Week, with a show poking fun at clichés about African fashion and favouring traditional weaving and braiding techniques unknown to the West. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.